Good afternoon. I'm Anjali Jaiswal with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and I have a brief presentation, but I will keep it under 5 minutes. Thank you so much, Dr. Garg, for having all of us here today. We greatly appreciate it, and I've had an opportunity to work with Mr. Popli at IREDA and really seeing the growth and the leadership of the financial market here in India with the start of the solar mission. A little bit on NRDC, too. Okay, great. It's the Natural Resources Defense Council. It's an international environmental group, NGO. We have members of 1.3 million members around the world. Our biggest international focus is in India and in China. We also work to a certain extent in Latin America. We prioritize developing clean energy. And India is a tremendous opportunity for clean energy development. So maybe I'll start to talk a little bit more about what we'll be talking about. Today we've heard, and I know it's the afternoon, in terms of, is this up? No. Okay. The targets that were announced in the Paris Agreement. And my colleague here is with me, Mr. Bhaskar Diol, who's here, and together with our team and many people here, we were in Paris for the discussions and the negotiations for the Paris Climate Agreement. What we're seeing after December is around the world, cities, states, countries coming together to push forward clean energy, to push forward solar, wind, energy efficiency. I'm actually based in San Francisco. Bhaskar is based here in New Delhi. But we have lots in common that we work on in both countries. One of the key challenges around the world is financing. How to get low-cost financing, innovative financing, to really fast-track the growth that we've already been seeing starting in India in 2009 and moving up. So I guess no slides, right? It's fine. It's not possible? Oh, great, wonderful. Okay, so we were talking about this earlier, but again, this highlights, some of the main areas. If you go right to left, ambitious goals. The Indian government, the Modi government, has announced strong goals that are domestic priorities as well as international priorities. Current financing challenges, we've heard a lot of them today in terms of the high interest rates, the availability, the hedging costs. There are also future challenges that will be coming up. And then what we see today, and I know that, it kind of reminds me of the beginning of the solar mission in terms of the interest and how we've seen so much growth and so much excitement with a lot of stakeholders involved, more members involved. IREDA doing an amazing job, with the bonds market, bringing in strategies like with the Uday scheme, what's happening with green bonds, which I think we'll have more discussion at a later session, but the bonds market, and just last week where we heard the new masala bonds that are being announced by IREDA, major opportunities in innovative financing. As I was talking about the global experience, finance being a major challenge, well, what we're seeing around the world is the development of a green bank. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about what a green bank is, since it is a newer idea just developing on the market. But we have green banks in New York and in Connecticut, in the UK, Japan. In India, the IREDA and the discussions here would be the first green bank really set up in a developing market. So what is a green bank, right? It's a publicly funded institution. So it's really focused as a green investment bank that is owned by the government or public funds but can be separate. And what it does is it works in partnership with private lenders. The main activities are some of the activities that IREDA are doing, but more in terms of co-investment, especially for underserved areas, credit enhancement to allow projects to really move forward, the types of projects that developers and financiers in the clean energy space are very much care about. Aggregation, warehousing, well, we've heard a lot about that, but really making it happen for rooftop, off-grid, forex hedging to bring down some of the costs. Market development, so this is something that IREDA does but could do even more, or that the banks do more, is really get together and work with the lenders, work with the banks. And the overall benefit, of course, is more capital, the international funds having a way to come into India to then go to projects more immediately at better terms that work for projects to get going on the ground. Again, I think I'm going to be running out of time, so I'll go over the slides quickly. And this is all in our report. So it's in the report that's online that we're releasing with our partner, the Council on Energy and Environment, CEW. It should also go up next week, hopefully on IREDA's website, so these are available. But explaining the difference between the mission, while a green bank is profitable, but its focus also is clearly to support clean energy. The sources of capital coming from, so if you look at the UK Green Bank, it came from the pension funds. New York had a separate fund there that was set aside by the governor for clean energy development. One of the areas that we've been discussing is a National Clean Environment Fund that might be available to either create a subsidiary or a private separate part of IREDA that would be a revolving fund that would allow it to do many of the activities that we spoke about. And then the institutional origin, there's several, but that it is a public institution, but it is separate. This is actually, in part, we did a discussion in May with Minister Piyush Goyal. And Minister Goyal asked us, what is the value proposition for green banks? And I think this audience knows it well. But you know, it has multiple values and benefits that it would have here in India in terms of clean energy as well as the finance that it would bring. Again, one more very important aspect of the green bank is while there's a model, it is not a cookie cutter. Each green bank can be adapted for a local context. So in a state, a small state in the United States is Connecticut. They have very high electricity bills, some of the highest in the country. So their sole purpose was renewable energy to bring down the electricity bills. New York State wanted to leverage the small public funds to bring in even more private funds. So focus simply on that is like how they can get the private investment. The UK, they've also focused on their emissions. So again, in India, this would be part of the scoping. Is it my time? I should finish? Okay. So the types of projects, here's some case studies that are in the reports on the UK, which focused on off-grid wind and now has the largest off-grid market. New York, same thing. Then this is in the fact sheet, which is a second step, which goes through the steps of how to create a green bank. And we're in India more like phase 1 and 2 starting to scope, as well as doing some of the analysis to set it up. Capacity building, the right people in the market are very important. Also, I'll go to this last slide, that India would be part of a green banks network that we'd be setting up. And then finally, here are the many reports that we've worked on with CEW. So thank you very much. Pleasure.